Hey, my name's Kevin, and today I'm going to show you how I use Para and Dendron to organize my life. Dendron is what you see right now. It is a local-first, markdown-based, hierarchical note-taking tool. I created Dendron because I have over 20,000 notes, and I haven't been able to find a tool that could handle that. The thing that Dendron does probably better than anything else out there is manage nodes in this dot delimited hierarchy. What this means is, in this case, for daily.journal, daily represents the root of the daily hierarchy, and journal is a child of daily. And then any subsequent dot would indicate a new level of the hierarchy. Right now you're looking at the very top of my hierarchy, the root, and in it I have my dashboard, and then the normal para organization. So projects divided into various categories, areas, resources, and archive. And then I have a bunch of credit at the bottom, which is stuff that I shall need to organize. Usually when I begin my day, I start it off in daily.journal. Daily journal has all my journals for the past 5 years. I group all my journals by year, followed by month of the current year, and then days of the current months. If I wanted to dive into, for example, a particular month, I can go in and look at my past entries. Another way of looking over journals is using Command L, which lets me traverse my hierarchies. Every day, I usually like by starting with a new daily journal. This is my daily journal for today, and generally all my journals follow this format. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a journal for tomorrow. Dendron has a concept of journal notes, which I can create using the Command-Shift-J shortcut. And by default, it creates a journal entry under the current hierarchy with today's date. I'm going to change the date to tomorrow and hit enter. Dendron also supports snippets. So because my journals follow the same structure, I can pre-fill that, and I can start using this to plan for tomorrow. Most of my time is actually not spent in the daily journal though. I keep a separate journal for different areas that I'm working on, and nowadays it tends to be Dendron. So this is Dendron.journal, and this is my daily journal for Dendron. I have all the tasks that I'm working on, and in this case I group it into chunks. So repeating, which is stuff I tend to make progress on or repeat every day. Tasks that I'm driving down in priority order, and then bugs, outreach, and other such tasks. If we go into one of these tasks, for example, making the para video, I tend to create a separate daily journal for different areas I'm working on, and nowadays it tends to be all Dendron. This is my daily journal for Dendron. And basically it's a giant to-do list. I group it in 2 different categories. Repeating is stuff I am making progress on every day, or repeat every day, and then tasks are listed in priority order, bugs, and other such categories. Something that you'll notice is that there are these tags next to a tag, or a task. These tags are really useful because I can use a search editor feature in VS Code to find just the lines that match a particular tag. This is all my customer outreach tasks for the day. Or for example, these are all the bugs for my day. Because I keep my daily journal in this hierarchical format, I can also use this to expand my search. For example, finding all bugs within the month, or similarly, all outreach tasks within the month. Let's dive into one of these tasks. So, para video, which is what I'm making right now. So this task is kind of like a project. I have a goal, I have an outcome, and I have subtasks that I want to do. Sometimes when I have a subtask, it's something I want to expand on, maybe make a whole note about. Well, Dendron supports this notion of a scratch note, which you can create by selecting text and hitting Command-Shift-S. And what this will do is it will take the selected text and link it to a new note called dendron.scratch to a state and timestamp. And you can use this to expand upon your thoughts or add more tasks. The nice thing is when you are done, if you wish to file it in a more appropriate place, you can do so using the rename note. So maybe instead of calling the scratch, you would call this to do and just call it make video. What's nice is when you rename the note, not only does it move the file, it also updates all the links that point to the file. And so this is a newly renamed task. Now that we've seen a project, I'm going to show you an area. Dendron is an area, and I can go to it by going to the root of this hierarchy. And inside the root, I have big bucket topics that I group things into. Here are the founding principles of Dendron and what we're trying to achieve, and then various things related to Dendron, like planning, business, development, legal, and so on and so forth. Dendron also supports this idea of backlinks, which, if you're familiar with GNOME, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's all the links that point to the current node. And so Dendron is mentioned in my areas note, and here you can see some of the other areas that I'm currently tracking. Now that you've seen areas, I'm going to go over resources, which make up the bulk of my notes in Dendron. I group resources in Dendron in relation to what kind of resource they are. For example, there are project resources. So projects are software projects such as Dendron or VS Code, which is what Dendron is built upon. The reason I do this is because every project hierarchy follows a similar structure. So in the case of VS Code, for example, VS Code has plugins. And when I go down to plugins, I can see all the plugins that I am interested in or might have used in the past. Something else that every project hierarchy has is APIs. And so I can use this to really quickly look at APIs I've used on VS Code. I also have a reference section, which is kind of just like a dumping ground for everything that doesn't have a predefined section. The nice thing about this hierarchy is that it doesn't just apply to VS Code. It applies to all my projects. So for example, for plugins, if I wanted to look at Jekyll plugins I've looked at in the past, it is that same structure, p.project.plugin. Same with reference. If I wanted to look at references of past projects, I can reuse that same hierarchy. So instead of memorizing tons of different layouts or different ways that different projects could be organized, I have one organizational scheme, which is encoded in my hierarchy, and I apply that to all my projects. Now the thing to keep in mind with these hierarchies is that they're not set in stone, and Dendron has a refactor command that can take any given hierarchy and change it. Not only does it change the files, but it will change everything that points to the files. So for example here, we can rename p.jekyll to pro.jekyll, and it'll rename the entire hierarchy for you. This is nice because it means that you can iteratively play around with your knowledge base and discover the best sort of models or hierarchies that work for you. Now, there's one more thing I want to show you in Dendron, which is archiving units. Archives live under the archive hierarchy, and it's basically all the projects and areas that are no longer active. Within Dendron, I also have a dendron.archive to just keep track of projects related to Dendron. Here, I have a blog post from earlier in the year that is ready to archive. The problem is that this blog post is actually a hierarchy, and there are links that point to it. Dendron has our archive command that takes whatever hierarchy you're on and prepends it with archive. It also updates all the links. So if we go back to Dendron.archive, we can see that this has also been updated. And with the last bit, you've now seen my typical workflow when using Para inside Dendron.